If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Listeners, I'm excited to share some good news. Podcast Connections is our brand new episode sponsor. If you feel your book deserves more reach but visibility hasn't come easily, podcast guesting can open the right doors. The team at Podcast Connections gets you in front of the audiences who need your message and your expertise. If podcast guesting is something you're interested in, please contact them at podcastconnections.co and tell them you heard about them on the Book Marketing Mentors podcast. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Bill Ellis. Bill is an author, podcast host, and veteran brand strategist who explores what lies beneath success, confidence, and identity. His book, Women Who Won, grew out of years of writing Friday's Fearless Brand, where he examined the lives of people, brands, and cultural icons who overcame adversity to achieve lasting success. Through his writing and his podcast, What's the Point?, Bill looks beyond the headlines. He explores how our stories are shaped and how confidence is built through experience. He asks what we're really trying to resolve. And he reminds us that the meaning of our lives are often become clear only when we step back and see the bigger picture. Bill, it was an honor to be a guest on your podcast, and now it's my honor to welcome you to the show, and thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Susan, thank you, and the honor is mutual. You were a tremendous guest. It was a fabulous episode. I hope all of your listeners check it out because, not surprisingly, you dropped a lot of really good information, so thank you for that.
Well, my pleasure. It's now your turn. I'm turning the tables on you, Bill. Bill, you've interviewed so many remarkable people, especially through when you put your book together, The Women Who Won. What's the biggest misconception that people have about success, and why do you think that matters to authors?
The thing that strikes me that I've learned most about success, the biggest misunderstanding of success is how we define it. Success for me is not the same as success for you, and trying to reach a level of quote unquote success as defined by how we grew up, what our parents thought, what other people that we are friends with or other people that we see, in particular with social media being what it is. The biggest misunderstanding and misperception about success is that someone else is meant to define it for us. We have to define success for ourselves.
What powerful words. Yes. You want your goals, not somebody else's goals for you. So I always remember that. I think it was Brian Tracy who said that, and I'm sure other people have said it too. And you said it in your own words, but that's absolutely true. It's like, how do we define success? How do you define success, Bill?
Differently than I used to, that's for sure. And I define success as being the best version, and this is going to sound hokey, and I don't care what it sounds like. It's my answer to your question. I define success as striving to be the best person I can and a better person today than I was yesterday. I do not define success by business acumens or even income. I define success by how I touch myself in improving, and in turn, how I touch other people's and try to make their life better.
And that's beautiful. And I know through your podcast, What's the Point? You very much dig into that as well, both allowing your guests to bring out how they walk through the world and then how you do too. Beautiful. I know that you often talk about the difference between the story we tell and then the story we actually lived. What do you mean by that? And how can authors uncover the story that's really worth telling?
The best story we can tell, in my view, is the authentic story. It's human nature, in my experience, and I'll speak for myself as it's my nature as a human to sometimes edit and make very tidy my experience, my life, my actions, my past. And I think people naturally shape their stories when they tell it, but the lived experience is usually none of those things. I believe that we have to, as best we can, be honest with ourselves. I've got a friend who put it this way: I have to have enough humility to be honest. And in that saying, to me, that means I need to tell my story without embellishment of some things I've done well and without camouflaging some things that I've done not so well. And believe me, there are plenty of those.
And more now, that's what people want. They want that authenticity. Interestingly enough, I just had another interview. We talked about the same thing, is that you don't go through life with everything being hunky-dory, even though there are some people who try and portray that on social media. However, there are ups and downs. We all have them. I mean, that's what life is about. So acknowledging that and feeling okay about sharing that. I know it was harder for me for many years to share mistakes I made. How about you? What stood in your way in the past, and what have you learned from that?
Well, what stood in my way in the past is, again, what I said, ego. Very
Mm,
simply, I wanted to project a certain definition of who I am, and that didn't always incorporate some of the real negative things in my life. And again, like I said, there have been many of them. But the thing about sharing those, at least in a general way, I don't think we are expected to share deeply personal or deeply graphic details. But anyone who is putting themselves forward as I've had a dream life and it's just been one steady uphill line on the graph of life is fooling themselves and not fooling most people that are hearing their communications. It's something, and you touched on it, failures are the mandatory path to success. However you define success, if we have not had failures in our lives, we are not trying enough. We are not stepping out of our comfort zone enough. We are not being honest enough with ourselves. Having those negatives, not only could they be looked at as learning opportunities, they are also the things that allow others, in particular with your audience as they're writing books, it allows their reader, and in my case with my podcast, my listeners, to relate to that person as human. And when people have situations that they've overcome, that makes them that much more relatable, that much more authentic, and that much more appreciated by the reader/listener.
mm. Yeah, and we want to trust people, and we trust them if we feel they're being authentic. I think that's such an important message that's coming out more and more now, because we don't know what to trust. There's so many things that we don't trust in this world, and being authentic and allowing people to see you as trustworthy, I think, is enormously credible these days, more than it's ever been. What are your thoughts?
I agree 100%. One of my recent guests, her name is Annie Dyke. Very, very cool story. She grew up very poor in New Mexico, had a split household. Her mother was in New Mexico, her father was in Alabama. She grew up in Clovis, New Mexico, which they might have a traffic signal, I'm not sure. But she ended up becoming an attorney because she wanted to, again, achieve quote unquote success. And then she found out that wasn't her definition of success. She ended up, after a divorce and a failed marriage of her own, realizing she didn't want to be an attorney, meeting a gentleman who was like her perfect soulmate, who was big into sailing. And she and he ended up living most of their life on a sailboat. She's written a couple of books. She wrote Salt of a Sailor. And then she wrote a book called Clovis, which reflects her life and the struggles of her life. And the thing that makes it so beautiful, Susan, is she's not hiding. She's not covering up the warts. Her story is magnificent. And part of what she talks about is embrace change and to step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And that's tough, stepping out of the comfort zone. And I see that a lot with authors when it comes to marketing their book. They're getting into sales and marketing, which often scares the EBGBs out of them. And it's outside their comfort zone. They don't know it. They don't know what to do. They're fearful of failure. You talked about the fact is that we have to fail, but they're fearful of that. And as a result, they often don't do anything because they're sort of protecting themselves. Have you experienced that at all?
Absolutely. Again, it's human nature to try to make ourselves look as good as possible, but authors that put forth a book that is something less than authentic and something that does not, in particular, if they are the subject of the book or if they're positioning themselves as the expert, if they're not talking about the difficulties and the challenges, the listener and the reader know that and they pick up on that. It's not success that people connect with. It's the uncertainty around success and the uncertainty around success and how that led to dealing with that so that success is achieved. And again, define success your own way. But all across the book, Women Who Won, and just for clarification, I did not interview any of those women directly. That was all 100% research that came up with that story. And the point of that book and the point of my weekly blog for 5 or 6 years every Friday was to show a brand and how they became known as who they were and what they did. It was the backstory. It was the human side of how they got to where they were. And then from there, I drew conclusions and said, so this is how what, I don't know, Betty White did that you can do in your own life. It's about success and the determination behind it. It's about being honest with and accepting the lack of certainty at the time. And there's no single type of winner. In that book, Women Who Won, every single woman in there was a winner, but they won in different ways.
Mm. And we all win in different ways. I mean, that's what you talked about too. It's like, how do you define success? We have that different definition, and in the same way, our success and our experience. Let's talk about experience and expertise, that differentiation, because I think that's something that many nonfiction authors struggle with. What role does, let's say, lived experience play in creating a genuine connection with readers beyond simply just having that expertise? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question, Susan. Thank you. I believe that those two actually go hand in hand. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. But to truly have expertise, my view is we have to have experience. It always amuses me, and I don't mean to knock anyone, and I'm not mentioning anyone in particular, but when I see people on LinkedIn and other marketing forums pitching themselves as a life coach, and they're 23 and 24 years old, they can coach someone to a life that's 23 or 24 years old. They don't have full expertise in life coaching because they don't have full experience in life. And that's just one example. Another one of my guests who was just amazing, his name is Tim Christofferson, and he wrote a book called Generation Restoration, which again is nonfiction. He's Danish. He lives in Denmark. He grew up appreciating the wilderness, the forest, and nature. That became his life's work. What he realized is that his success is doing what he can to save the world, not from climate change, but from restoring our natural resources, which we use pretty regularly and often without thought of replenishing them. His book came from experience of living and appreciating and loving the outdoors and nature, and then studying it, going to school for it, working in the field, gaining not just experience, but expertise, to the point that the book he wrote was acknowledged by the United Nations as far as a project that is essential to restore forest and seas and clean water. He had his testimony in the front was written by Jane Goodall. Tim was an example of a tremendous combination of experience and expertise that grew over time.
Which, as we get older, that happens. If I think back to how I started, I was very reliant on my expertise. I didn't necessarily have the experience yet, but over time that came. And as you say, I was able to marry the two, the expertise and the experience. How about you?
I believe the same thing. And I hope your listeners don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you have to become as old as I am to have experience and expertise. And I'm not saying that you can't have that at a younger age, be it 20, 21, 22. But what you just said is expertise is learned, in my view, and experience is living that expertise. So one is book learning in a manner of speaking, and one is living through it on our own. And so we can certainly have expertise, but if we don't have the experience, it doesn't have quite the soul. It doesn't have quite the relatability as someone that has gone through whatever it took for them to gain that expertise. In your case, Susan, you gained a tremendous amount of expertise from doing what you were doing, but then the experience of how to apply that, how to take that, not only to help yourself, but in turn to turn that into a business where you help hundreds, if not thousands of people achieve their goals. There was what you said, you had expertise, and then your experience strengthened and gave you clarity on what you could do with that expertise to achieve your goals. And that's what experience did.
Yeah. How about the role of a mentor or a coach, especially for an author, as finding a story that they can tell? What are your thoughts on that?
Anyone that, in my view, is writing a book without a mentor or a coach or a trusted advisor or a group that's a sounding board is doing themselves a disservice. When I wrote Women Who Won, it was somewhat a different approach because Women Who Won is a compilation of blogs that I'd written over years. So it wasn't necessarily starting off as a book. But what I then had to do was write an introduction and write a chapter 1 explaining what this book was all about, why I did it, and what I had hoped people would benefit from it. And I took that and sent it to a few mentors, coaches, friends, definitely experienced advisors, one of whom is John David Mann, who is a multi-time best-selling author on the New York Times list and others. And I sent it to him just to get was expecting a rubber stamp. And what came back was an email, and the headline on the email was "Stop the Presses." And he said, if you've gone to publication with this, good luck. Here's what's wrong with it. So had I not had the ability and the thought to run that past someone who knows a lot better than I, and my first thought was, what are you, crazy? This is very well written. And then it took me a second to realize, wait, he's in your life and a friend, and you sent it to him because he has done this. He's not talking about it. So once I realized that, I knew that it was the best thing I had was to take what I thought was brilliant and send it out to someone else. Every blog I wrote, without fail, every blog I wrote, I had someone read it and critique it and edit it prior to publishing it. And that makes all the difference in the world.
And kudos to you for taking that advice and listening to somebody else, because often, like you said, it's like, okay, what does he know or she know? Or it's different from them. And if your ego's too wrapped up in your own stuff, then it's sort of, you feel, I don't know, challenged by the fact that somebody's not putting that rubber stamp on it right then and there and guiding you, and you being open to that guidance is brilliant.
Well, again, that's something learned through experience of having not done that.
Don't we always learn the hard way? Many people write a book hoping that it's going to change their business, open new doors, or create opportunities. But from what you've observed, what makes one author's story become an opportunity, while, let's say, another author's story might simply just stay on the page and not go anywhere?
To me, at the very base, is some people write better than others. It's very simple. Some of us have great ideas, some of us have great thoughts, some of us have wisdom that we can share, but we're just not good at writing. Other people are brilliant writers, and that will allow the words, as you said, to come off the page and to resonate. So it's a matter of writing well to start with. And again, back to John David Mann, who taught me, he said, to become a great writer, start reading great authors. What I learned is I had to get out of myself, and I'm a decent writer. I'm certainly not as good a writer as I could be or as others, but so it's a matter of starting with, are you a good writer? And if you need a coach to help you get there, that's fine. I've got a guest coming up on the podcast whose name I won't mention yet, whose book has just come out. She started writing that book 11 years ago. 2 years into it, she hired someone to help her. And then it took another 9 years to get there. So it's a matter of being a good writer. It's a matter of putting it down authentically. It's a matter of writing it in such a way that you put yourself in the seat of the reader and say, is this going to resonate with people that I'm trying to resonate with? If the purpose of writing a book is exclusively to grow one's business or to make it what I'll say, a business card, those are typically the kinds of books that don't go anywhere. I saw a great movie a week or two ago. My wife and I just stumbled on this movie called Finding Forrester. And it's a 26-year-old movie that I'd never heard of. It's about a writer and a young lad who wants to be a writer. It's a brilliant movie, but there was so much wisdom in there about writing. And one of the things that the old writer told the new one, played by Sean Connery of all people, he said, the words we write for ourselves are always better than those we write for others. And what that struck me as is we have to be genuine in what we're writing, because if we're not genuine, if we don't believe it, if it doesn't resonate with us, it's not going to resonate with anyone else.
I love that movie. It's interesting. I haven't seen it for a long time, but I remember it now. When you mentioned it, I was like, oh, yes, maybe I need to re-see that.
Well, there's a
Again,
section in
yeah.
there that I was thinking, boy, I'm so glad I'm watching this, because I knew I had a session with Susan Friedman coming up.
Gathering the materials.
It's gathering materials, but also what it did was, in many ways, it's things I've heard before, but it put it into a different perspective. And that's because it was in a story that I could relate to. And story is so powerful. What Sean Connery said in that movie to his protege is, no thinking, that comes later. What John David Mann says is, write drunk, edit sober. And what that means is put it down on paper and then come back and do what you can to massage it and to change it and to improve it. Two identical concepts in different words from different people at different times.
Yeah, wow. I wonder how many great authors followed that advice.
I would think most of them.
Many of them, yes. You're right, because often when you're in another state, whether it's drunk or, whatever you're high on, you come from a different point of view and you'll just write things. You're not thinking about it in the same way.
When John says that, he doesn't mean go out and drink a 24-pack of,
No, I know.
Budweiser. Basically, what he says is write uninhibited. Let it float, just
Yeah.
as if you were drunk, and take the guardrails off. Take the bumper guards out of the bowling alley. Go for it with everything you have, and then come back and clean it up.
Yes. That's why they say, too, that you don't go back and edit straight away. You just write and write and write and then edit, because otherwise, I mean, I remember early on that I would write something and then edit it and then write something else and then edit it. Well, it would take forever to get this done. But then when you just write, and I think it was Steinbeck who said the dirty copy, you just write the first dirty draft and then you go back and then you
Again,
massage that.
same concept, different expert, different words. I'll be honest with you, full self-disclosure. My second book is still in this computer that I'm talking to you through because I write and edit and then rethink. And that's a great example of knowing the right thing, the best way to do it, and just not allowing myself to do it that way. If I were to just hit this keyboard and go even an hour a day, that book would come out so much faster. Even counting the time, I'd have to go back and say, well, that didn't make sense or that doesn't tie together. But I'd get all my ideas out.
Yeah, I challenge you to just go and do it. Just write for the sake of writing and resist the temptation to edit because that is so strong. Yeah, it's
I
worth
knew
it.
by saying that you would challenge me, and it just reinforces what I think I've just done is challenge myself. So we'll see.
I'm going to check on you.
Please do.
Bill, this is a wonderful segue for you to share with our listeners how they can find out more about you and your work and your books, etc.
Well, they can check out BillEllis.com. They can check out my podcast, which is wherever you find your podcast, including YouTube. It's called What's the Point? The full title is What's the Point? Discover Your Purpose. So you can just Google What's the Point Bill Ellis and you'll find it. Well over 130 guests that share experience, just like you did, Susan. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me. You can always just drop me an email if you want, bill@billellis.com.
Perfect. Yeah. And listeners, I highly, highly recommend that you go and listen to some of the episodes of Bill's podcast. They're amazing. He really goes deep with his guests. I tried a little with my questions with him, but nothing to the extent that he does with his guests. So, yeah, go and check him out and check out the podcast. You really enjoy it. And Bill, as you know, we always have our guests leave our listeners with a golden nugget. What's yours?
My golden nugget is I'm going to just reference my podcast title, What's the Point? And I think it's very important for us to ask ourselves, what's the point? Why are we doing something? What's the point? Well, I should take that job. What's the point? Well, it pays a lot of money. Okay, fine. What's the point? What are you going to do with the money? And what's the point? We can't ask ourselves often enough, I think. It's very hard for us as humans to want to take a hard look inside and ask ourselves tough questions. But if we want to grow and if we want to find true success, however we define it, we're going to have to do that. So as you go through work, life, family, whatever the case might be, ask yourself when you're doing something, what's the point?
Beautiful. Yeah. And as a result of being on your show and hearing that, I was like, yeah, I asked myself that. That comes up several times. What's the point? Why am I doing this? That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure having you here. And listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected to, let's you and I jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales, because you've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. So go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.